In the heart of Silicon Valley, Zoe, a rising star in the tech world, lived her life by the millisecond. As the creator of TimeWarp, the most popular digital scheduling app on the market, she prided herself on maximizing every moment of her day. Her app buzzed and beeped, constantly reminding her of the next task, the next meeting, the next deadline. Zoe's life was a whirlwind of productivity, but something was missing. One particularly hectic morning, Zoe's TimeWarp app malfunctioned. Panic set in as she realized she had no idea what she was supposed to be doing next. In her flustered state, she wandered into an unfamiliar part of town and stumbled upon a quaint little shop with a sign that read, Tempus Fugit, hourglasses and timepieces. Intrigued and desperate for any sort of timekeeping device, Zoe entered the shop. The tinkling of a small bell announced her arrival, and she found herself surrounded by hundreds of hourglasses of all shapes and sizes. Behind the counter stood an elderly man with kind eyes and weathered hands. "Welcome," he said warmly. "I'm Arthur. How can I help you today?" Zoe explained her predicament, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I need something to keep track of time. My app crashed, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing right now." Arthur chuckled softly. "Ah, the modern dilemma. Always needing to know what's next, never fully present in the now." He reached for a beautifully crafted hourglass. "Perhaps this might help you see time differently." Zoe eyed the hourglass skeptically. "I don't think that's going to cut it. I need to know exactly how many minutes and seconds I have for each task." "Humor an old man," Arthur said, turning the hourglass over. "Watch the sand flow for a moment." Reluctantly, Zoe focused on the falling grains. As she watched, she felt her breathing slow and her shoulders relax. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about what came next. "You see," Arthur explained, "an hourglass doesn't just measure time, it shows us the flow of time. Each grain is a moment, precious and unique." Zoe shook her head, snapping out of her trance. "That's lovely, but it's not practical. I have a company to run, deadlines to meet." Arthur nodded understandingly. "Of course, but tell me, when was the last time you felt truly satisfied with your day? When did you last feel like you had enough time?" The question caught Zoe off guard. She couldn't remember. Despite her app's efficiency, she always felt behind, always rushing to the next thing. "Let me show you something," Arthur said, leading her to his workbench. He picked up a half-finished hourglass. "I've been working on this piece for weeks. Each curve, each join, requires patience and attention. I can't rush it, or the whole thing falls apart." Zoe watched as Arthur worked, his movements deliberate and graceful. She found herself captivated by the process, losing track of time entirely. "But how do you know when you've done enough for the day?" Zoe asked, genuinely curious. Arthur smiled. "I listen to the sand, to my body, to the work itself. When it feels right to stop, I stop. The work will be there tomorrow." As they talked, Zoe found herself opening up about her life, her constant stress, and the nagging feeling that she was always missing something important. Arthur listened patiently, offering gentle insights from his years of craftsmanship. "You know," he said, "I think your app and my hourglasses aren't so different. They both measure time. The difference is in how we relate to that measurement. Your app makes time feel like a series of boxes to be checked off. My hourglasses show time as a continuous flow." Zoe pondered this. "But how can I run a successful business if I'm not constantly optimizing every minute?" Arthur handed her the hourglass she had been watching earlier. "Try this for a week. Use it alongside your app. When you start a task, turn it over. Let the sand remind you to stay present in what you're doing, rather than worrying about what's next." Skeptical but intrigued, Zoe agreed to the experiment. Over the next week, she found herself returning to the shop daily, drawn by Arthur's calm presence and wisdom. As the days passed, Zoe noticed subtle changes. She found herself more focused during meetings, more creative in her problem-solving. She started to enjoy her work again, rather than just racing through it. On her final visit to the shop, Zoe arrived with excitement. "Arthur, I think I've figured it out. I've been so focused on managing time that I forgot to experience it. My app helps me organize my day, but your hourglass helps me live it." Arthur beamed with pride. You've learned the secret that every craftsman knows. True productivity comes from a balance of planning and presence. Inspired by her experience, Zoe set out to redesign TimeWarp. She integrated features that encourage users to be more mindful of the present moment, to find flow in their work, and to balance efficiency with enjoyment. Months later, Zoe stood on a stage, presenting the new version of TimeWarp to a packed auditorium. We've added a new feature, she announced, inspired by an old friend and a simple grain of sand. We call it Flow Mode. It doesn't just tell you what to do next, it helps you fully engage with what you're doing now. As she demonstrated the feature, a familiar face caught her eye in the audience. Arthur sat there, smiling proudly. Zoe felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. In our quest to make every second count, she concluded, we sometimes forget that it's not about how much we do, but how present we are in what we're doing. Time isn't just something to be managed, it's something to be experienced, moment by precious moment. The audience erupted in applause, but Zoe's gaze remained on Arthur. In that moment, she realized that the most valuable thing she had gained wasn't a new feature for her app, but a new perspective on life itself. The last sand timer had taught her the timeless art of living in the flow. Please like, share, and subscribe.